Our guest today is one of the co-founders of Opus Bono, Pete Ferrara. Pete, you look a little better than the last time I saw you. Last week after the show, I went out to Pete's house, and Pete's been working on his log cabin, sanding the thing, and he was covered with dust. And it was a good thing there weren't any matches around, because you would have gone up like gasoline.
Well, like I say, a log cabin is a nice place to visit, but to live in one is a totally different experience. And I don't want our listeners to think that we're laying here and I've got a huge log home like the one down at Disney. It's a fixer-upper, and it needs a lot of work. Lot of work.
And you've had Joe help you, and
I had the whole crew out there. Oh yeah. And you start sanding, and you get an inch of dust on you, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Kind of reminded me of Pigpen from the Peanuts series,
That's
where when you had the dust flying all around the place. Anyway, first of all, let's talk about what is your. Do you have a title here? Are you vice president of Opus Bono, or?
I am co-founder and treasurer.
Co-founder and treasurer.
Yes.
Okay, so what are your main functions that you have? Your main duties?
Well, primarily, what happened was when we formed Opus Bono, the four people involved, Joe, myself, another businessman, and then Father Edward Perone. Joe and I were the primary actors in all of it, out of the four co-founders. Joe obviously had the media experience, and unfortunately I had the accounting experience. I'm a former CPA. So when all of those things that needed to be done, like filing forms and the accounting and everything, it naturally fell into my lap. And I told myself when I was in college that I didn't want to be an accountant the rest of my life, but God has other plans, so here I am.
So, but that's not all you do. What else do you do?
No. Well, primarily, in working with the priests, primarily Joe and I take the calls. He takes 50%, I take 50%. And we never know what the volume is going to be in any given day. So, we could spend all day working on a case or cases, or half the day, depending on the situation. So what I try to do from my accounting responsibilities is I try to get in early and make sure that I take care of all the accounting needs that are necessary. What are those? Well, naturally there's the paying of the bills, balancing the checkbook, hiring people that need to be hired, paying those people that need to be hired, and those types of things. And then also, since we are a nonprofit and we get all of our money from individual donors, we have to send out receipts and make sure that communication goes out, and I'm responsible for all that, make sure it's done in a timely manner.
Okay, so you're kind of like the operations officer.
Yes, I'm in charge of staplers too. Every morning I come in and make sure that there's at least 20 and no more than 25 staples in each stapler, and there have been infractions. There have been some.
All right. Last week when we had Joe on, I kind of got an overview of what he did, just like you. But now I'd like to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
I always find it interesting to find out, first of all, where they are right now. And you gave us that you're the operations, and you also work with priests. But how did you get involved in this?
How did I get involved?
What was going on in your life at the time when this whole thing started? I mean, what were you doing?
Well, prior to Opus Bono, I was working with another gentleman in the systems arena. Like I said, I'm a former CPA. I spent 5 years in public accounting, and then I got my master's degree and then moved into systems. And I worked in systems for 10 years. There's a company, everyone will probably remember the name Ross Perot.
Oh, yes.
There's a company that he started called EDS, and I was there for a while and transitioned from that to a more defined area of systems, and that's where I was working with a friend of mine whom I met through church and whatnot, and we would work on everything, whether it be a small system or a large system. The largest systems that we worked on were for General Motors, Chrysler, Ford. We're in Detroit, so naturally those are the customers we would get. And, you know, the systems we built were important enough that we were 2 floors below the CEO and all of that. So, like Rick Wagoneer, who lost his job when GM went bankrupt, I'd pass him in the elevator all the time. I'd say hi, but he would never say hi back because he doesn't know me.
He didn't know who he was talking to.
I never got in the elevator with him because nobody got in the elevator with him. But it was very, very interesting work, very, very interesting work. And what had happened was that through this other gentleman, I met Joe, and Joe was in transition from his position as a CEO at a company, and somehow we talked him into coming on board with us, with our small company. And he said, sure, why not? And for a couple of years, the 3 of us worked together with this systems company, financial systems consulting company. And since we were all Catholic, we would, we'd go to church together sometimes at lunch and those types of things. And one of the priests that I met was the first case that we worked on. He was a visiting priest from Africa. And since I was not a parishioner of the parish, I could get involved in the case. He had been arrested, and there was a court order that there could be no parishioner contact with him. And since I wasn't a parishioner, I could have contact. I bailed him out, and that's how we got involved with Opus Bono.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. I had less gray hair. And
well, how did you transition from your job to becoming full-time Opus Bono?
It's interesting. I don't know. I don't remember. I try to put that out of memory. No. Again, we helped the one priest, and while we were helping that priest, we were sitting around a conference table on, 13th floor, looking over the Detroit River. It was the office of the attorney, and Joe was opening the mail, and we were getting letters from other priests saying, can you help, and that type of thing. And it just transitioned from us helping one priest to helping many priests. I can remember after the first case, I went back to Joe's house. It was the morning. I went to Joe's house, and we were going to clean up, put file papers away and everything. And there's Joe standing in his suit and tie. And I thought, what's going on? He goes, come on, there's a priest flying in. We got to pick him up at the airport. His attorney asked if we'd pick him up because nobody would. And I just, okay. So we got in the car, picked up that priest, and then there was another one, and then another one. And it just happened.
Because it was in the news and there.
Oh yeah, there was no grand plan. As I tell people, if you think we planned this out, you're giving us too much credit because it's crazy.
So how long before you left your job and started going full time?
Well, since it was our company and we had somewhat control of our contracts, naturally if the customer wanted us there, we had to be there. And on top of that, it was 2002. I mean, the economy wasn't doing that great. So business was naturally slow too. So it sort of made sense. But if there were contracts that needed to be worked on, I would go work on them. And Joe and the other gentleman would sit in the office and take care of the priest cases. And then eventually the other gentleman left because he had his family to take care of, a young family. And we're still in contact with him daily almost. But it just slowly transitioned to a point where Joe and I looked at each other and said, we have to do this full time. There's no way this can be a, go to work and then come home and work in the office, home office.
Yeah. Okay. Now, there's a promotional item you have that shows a picture of you that says, I love to give priests in need money, or something to that effect.
Right.
How about, what are some of the reasons a priest would need financial help? I would think that the church takes care of their needs.
Right. And I had the same thought when we first got involved in this. But it was, as the priest started calling, first off, every case is unique. There's some similarities between them, but every case is unique. But as we worked on more and more cases, we recognized how all of this works, how the priest works for the bishop and represents the bishop and those types of things. But certainly, I'll do it on a scale. If a priest is accused and removed, he could be cut off from everything: salary, health care, auto insurance. He could walk in one day and be cut off.
Does that normally happen where if just the accusation, is that enough to cut them off for the most part, or is it each business is different? Some will keep them on salary, put them on administrative leave.
Mm-hmm. Each bishop is different. Each bishop handles their cases differently. Typically, the ones that don't cut them off don't call us because they don't need help. So,
Okay.
But the ones who do need help call us, and if it's at that point where they're totally cut off for whatever reason, naturally, the man has to eat.
Right.
He has to lay his head somewhere. A lot of times they're calling from a relative's house that they can't stay at long term, and we have to help find him a place to live, possibly get him money to eat for food and that type of thing. And usually what's very interesting is that usually when they ask, they don't come in and say, I need $10,000 a month. It's usually, can you give me $50 for the month? I just need to buy some food.
Really?
And that's what's been very interesting in all of this, is that some of our detractors will say that these people are calling, they're taking advantage of you. They're just taking advantage of you. I know this man, he's going to take advantage of you. Well, if he's taking advantage of me by asking for $50 a month, I'd rather be fooled by that than not help somebody with $50 a month. And again, why would he ask for $50? Well, maybe he can live with relatives. Maybe he's old enough to get Social Security, those types of things, but he just needs that little bit to get by. So, if the man is... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, so if the priest is, mainly kicked out of his parish,
Mm-hmm.
or his assignment, he has no place to live,
Mm-hmm.
is it usually they go to family members?
Well, every priest has some form of support network, whether it's family, friends, that type of thing. So, yes, usually, this is what is common. If a priest is at a parish and he's accused, no matter what the accusation is, he's asked to leave, and sometimes it's that day. We've had a lot of cases where the man can't even go back to the parish until after hours because the diocese does not want him seen by anybody. But usually when that happens, he has somewhere to go. It's a friend, it's a brother priest, those types of things. So, but you can imagine the state of shock that they're in. In the very beginning, naturally, we had no experience with any of this. We're businessmen, so we look at a problem. What's the cause of the problem? What are the possible solutions? And as you work through those, and as we started working with some of the hierarchy, whether it be a priest or a bishop, you begin to recognize that it's kind of this whole thing is kind of like a cancer, in the sense that you can't just cut it out and then be done with it. I mean, this thing has fingers that go in and in some cases go in and grow somewhere else and cause many, many, many difficulties. And for someone like yourself who, you may have known the man for the 40 years that he's been a priest, or maybe you've only known him for a couple of years as a parishioner, you see this happen, and you understand the church's teachings, the 10 Commandments, you understand there's right and wrong, and there's confession and that type of thing. But then you see what takes place, and it doesn't make any sense. It's trying to put a square, a round peg in a square hole.
Yes.
And it's very, very painful. And there's, the one thing that we we don't do is we don't want to come out and say, this bishop is bad and this bishop is good and those types of things, because number one, that's not our place. But at the same time, there's a lot of factors involved that we don't see, and what we don't want to do is we don't want to discourage the priest by saying, oh, there's no hope. Yeah, you can go to Rome and there's no hope. But we also don't want to come out and say, oh, Bishop John Doe, he's terrible. He's a horrible, horrible man. We leave this up to God. We've learned this, is that we leave this up to God, because if there's an egregious action against the bishop, or there's an egregious action against the victim, at the end of the day, God's our judge, and he's the one who's going to straighten all those things out. That doesn't make your life any easier today, if you have bills to pay, or if you have food that needs to be eaten, or hopefully you can get food to eat. So what we try to do is, Father, here's what's happened to your brother priests. Here's the experience that we have. Here's your potential canon law responses, and here's the possible solutions that we've seen.
Okay, so you don't get in the middle of the thing with the bishop and the priest, the intricacies of canon law. I mean, you may help with canon lawyers.
Right. We are not canon lawyers. We are not civil or criminal lawyers. So, and we tell the priest, when he first calls, we tell the priest, Father, you can tell us as much as you want or as little as you want. It's confidential, but, there are some people who will tell you 80%, but the other 20%, it's like telling your kid when they go to confession, you got to tell them everything. I don't want to tell them everything. This is embarrassing. I think some of that goes on. And then at the same time, we'll get responses sometimes from diocesan officials that go, oh, you just don't understand. You don't have the whole story. We've learned over the years that, I don't need to know the whole story. I don't need to hear the whole story from one side or the other. I just need to understand what type of situation this man is in and what type of help is possible. Because, again, we are not the lawyers. We are not the ones who are going to defend him. We put them in touch with those canon lawyers. More times than not, we pay for those canon lawyers because the priest can't. Okay. So our goal is to facilitate and get the ball rolling in support. And through those actions, like Christ said, don't do as they do. Don't do as they say. Yeah. What did he say? Don't do as he says. Do as they do. We try to do, and we try to leave. If the bishop is being egregious, hopefully our actions and the actions that are being taken will cause him pause in the quiet of night.
Okay.
And the same on the other side.
All right. Let's get back to the financials.
Sure.
Giving priests money. Why would you? They call you, or they've already contacted you, say they're in trouble. Normally they've contacted you prior to asking for money. They've asked you maybe for some assistance on what to do, some direction and some counseling.
Yes.
How do you know when to give money and when not to give money? And how often do priests... Well, let's just start with that. How do you know when to give money and when not to give money? Right.
That's a very good question, because when this all started, that was part of our, well, how do we know? What checks and balances do we put in place? And God provided the answer. And the primary answer was, we had hardly anything to give away anyhow. People think, oh, you're helping priests, that's great, you must be bringing in the money. No, helping priests is not a lucrative business to be in, if I can say it like that. So when the priests called in the beginning, very few of them. In fact, I can only think of one or two cases where the priest asked for enormous amounts of money, then that the others were simply the $50, $100. So using that, since we could only go that far anyhow, $50, $100, it helped us understand what these men were asking for. And we've never gotten a situation where a priest calls today and says, can you send me $50 today? There's always something underlying. He has a situation, a case. He sends us paperwork. We put him in touch with a canon lawyer. So we've been in touch with him for a little while. And as he understands what his rights are or the position he's in, and we understand it, it makes it that much easier to then go, okay, you need $100, I'll send you $100.
All right. So you have a lot of familiarity with the priest before they start asking for money anyways.
Right. That priests don't just call up and say, I'm Father so-and-so from, Hoboken, can you send me $100? It doesn't happen that way.
Okay. I guess one of the questions people would have is, a lot of these priests have been accused and are guilty. How can you give them money?
Well, I know it's difficult with some of the cases, but we're all guilty. We all go to confession, or we should all go to confession. And, God forgives us. So if a man calls in and we know who that man is, usually the ones who are extremely guilty, if I can say it like that, I mean, they're already in the press. They're already, and, we've, and some of these men are in prison too. We work with them, and they don't call us to continue to perpetuate whatever wrong behavior they were involved in. When they call us, they're in a position that they need help. They want to change, or they've done, and they or they have already changed and recognize that their lives are what they are, and they're willing to accept that. But at the end of the day, you still got to eat. So
okay. So these are really basic needs that they have.
Oh, absolutely.
And are you? Well, do you help a priest if he's guilty? You may give the impression that you're condoning what he's doing.
Right. And I understand people's first response, but I'll use this example because this just happened. There's a priest in prison, very popular case in the Midwest, and he got in touch with us. He found out somehow that we interact with priests in prison, and it's probably from other prisoners and that type of thing. And he'd send a letter monthly, just saying hi, that type of thing. Thank you for being there. Never asked for anything. And then at some point in time, he comes along and says, "Hey, I've put together this little Catholic choir in the prison, and we're using one hymnal. So we've got about 40 guys trying to look over each other's shoulder, use this hymnal. Do you know anybody at XYZ company that puts out these hymnals?" I said, I don't, but I'll contact them and see what they offer. And I contacted them, and they offered, I think they offered a discount, a lower cost. And I said, I then wrote the priest back and said, well, we can get them. We can get you 40 of them. How do I do this? And what he did is he got all the paperwork together, the name of the gentleman who's in charge of this, to receive the books, the employee of the prison. And, I signed all the forms, wrote to this gentleman. I then contacted the publishing company and said, mail them here. He's ready to receive them. And I just received a real nice card from the priest he made this card out of a manila folder. And he must be an artist because on the front was a picture of Christ behind bars. And all the thank yous from all the different people. Now, these aren't all priests, but they're men who are Catholic, or at least going to the Catholic service. And, if you didn't know they were in prison, their response was no different than you might get from a cousin, happy birthday, thank you for the gift, thank you for the card. I wanted to point out one thing. I mentioned that card that this priest wrote and made and artwork. Apparently we're putting that up on our Facebook page this Saturday. For those of you on Facebook, facebook.com/Opus Bono, and you'll get to our page. There'll be a picture of what he drew and then, sent to us.
Terrific. All right, we've talked about how and why Opus Bono gives money to priests. How does Opus Bono get their money?
99% of our support comes from individual donors. We are not supported by the Catholic Church formally. The hierarchy does not send us money. We do not receive grants from governmental or non-governmental organizations. So primarily our donors are individuals, priests, brother priests, whom we either contact us or we contact them initially, and they start donating to us. We follow the direct mail formula of excuse me, sending a mailing out every 6 to 8 weeks,
Okay.
and that's how we get our funding.
Yeah. Now you've been on Facebook, I think 3 or 4 months. Or so.
Not long. Boy, that's a good question.
How long has that improved your finances?
It's allowed us to get out to more people economically. You know, Facebook is very interesting. I myself am not on it personally.
Neither am I.
No, my wife is.
We're old.
and- That's right. That's right. That's right. I just don't, because I'm not going to send pictures of, here I am sanding my house. You know,
Oh, I would love to see you sanding.
and
your
there was
house.
there was a show I was watching, and they ran across an old friend or an old acquaintance from college or high school, and the one brother said, you know, if I haven't talked to you in 20 years, there's a reason for that. So, but the Facebook, Twitter, emails, they've been very helpful in getting people to understand what we do on a daily basis, the types of cases, like Walt who called in. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are parishioners and friends of priests who think to themselves, wow, you know, is it just us or this, you know, and it's not just you. And Facebook does aid in people going, wait a minute, I know what's happening here. What's very interesting about Facebook, it took us a long time to decide to go onto Facebook because we weren't sure what type of response we were going to get. You know, we've gotten a lot of terrible letters, emails from people saying they want to find us and hunt us down and that type of thing. And there's a lot of anger because I think what they think is that we're helping these priests
Get away with
get away and continue on
with
in their
the
bad
crimes.
behavior.
Okay.
But there was one in particular where we sent out something about, you know, this priest needs help, and somebody responded in the notes section, you know, this is a scam, they're trying to scam you, don't give money to them, this, that, and the other thing. And as we sat there and looked at this comment, and this is in the very beginning of Facebook for us, we were trying to figure out what to respond. Boop, another response comes in, and it's from this person. We don't know who this person is. You know, responding to the other person, you're wrong, my uncle's a priest, and these guys, da 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 da. And it's amazing to see how it sort of monitors itself. You know, we still have to go in and take
Get
some
rid of
things
the
off
nasty
once in a while.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see, and I think that helps the average Joe out there who's not involved with helping priests daily to look at it and go, okay, I get a sense of what's going on, and the next time I go to Mass and I see this happening, they get a better sense of what a priest does.
Okay. Has it increased your?
We think it has. We think it has because we've gotten a lot more online donations, and those typically come from our activities, Facebook, Twitter, email. Those typically come from, you know, sending out an email or a Facebook post and those types of things.
Okay. In the earlier days, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have mailers. How were you getting the money? I mean, how are you promoting yourself? How long have you been doing the mailers?
We've been doing the mailers, now it's probably been 3 or 4 years. Prior to that, no, maybe it's only 2 years we've been doing the mailers. But prior to that, what we were doing was sending mail out ourselves. We
Okay.
had a laser printer, and we'd print out, you know, 5,000 letters, and then we'd sit there and fold them and stuff them. I've spent many a day in my pajamas at the kitchen table just folding letters and then stuffing them and then just putting stamps on them. And we once prepared a mailing to all the priests. There's roughly 40,000 priests, diocesan and religious, in the United States. We sent out a mailing to all of them. We printed up everything. 80,000 envelopes, because you have the delivery envelope and the return envelope, 40,000 letters. You know, it was...
Wow.
It
All
was
by hand.
Oh, sure. It was, there's some painful memories and there's some funny memories in all of that.
Okay. Going back to the priests, don't the priests get pensions and Social Security when they retire? I mean,
Sure. There's either a pension or they do get some Social Security. Some of the older priests, though, do not get Social Security. They opted out. They could opt out.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we didn't know that either, but they could opt out of Social Security, so they're not eligible for even help from Medicare, Medicaid type thing. But, let's say there's a priest who's got Social Security or access to Medicaid, Medicare. You don't just wake up tomorrow and go to the governmental office and say, I need $1,500 for a root canal or whatever the case is.
Yes.
There's forms that have to be filed, and or disability. You don't just go get disability. You sign up for it, and it takes months. We're working with a guy right now who's trying to get on disability. He will eventually, but in the meantime, he's got to eat, and he's got to pay the bill. I think we FedExed payment to his rent so that he didn't, get kicked out of his apartment.
Wow.
While he's in this process. But he'll eventually get it.
Okay.
And then...
In this particular case, he's not getting anything from the diocese? He's been cut off?
No, he was accused and removed.
Okay,
and,
years ago.
Yeah. Now, I want to bring that up. There's priests who are accused and removed, but they're not, the term that everyone's probably heard is laicized. All laicized is it removes the priest's daily responsibilities as a priest. He's still a priest. He's always going to be a priest. He'll be a priest in heaven, okay? He just doesn't have the daily responsibilities. Now, we either believe that or we don't. We here tend to believe that, and if we get a call from a man like that who really needs help, we'll do the best we can to help him. Again, they don't ask for thousands and thousands of dollars. It's usually $100, $200. What was very interesting, I got a call once from an older order priest, very intelligent man, and he was asking if we helped the priests who were laicized. And before I was able to answer the question, he sort of put his fist down on the table. And he said, "Well, we don't owe, because we don't owe them anything." And I just said, "Well, Father, we do the best we can for the priests." And he said, "Okay." And it really stuck with me, obviously, because I remember it. But
And this was an order priest?
this was a very educated order priest.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, the church's teachings are that he's a priest. He's going to be a priest forever. He'll be a priest in heaven if he gets there, hopefully with the rest of us.
Okay. All right. If you have any phone, if you do want to call in, our phone number is 323-784-3614. Again, we're talking with P. Ferrara, the Vice President, Operations Manager of Opus Bono. All right. Now, the priests adjusting to life, they've been removed from their position.
Mm-hmm.
If they're older, they might be getting pensions. What about priests, younger priests that, they went to seminary for 6 years, became a priest, and they were removed for some accusation? Where do they go? What do they do after their whole life and whole training had been to be a priest?
Right.
I mean,
there are some very hard stories out there. There's if you're a younger priest, then your parents are typically still alive. One man went back to his bedroom in the basement at his parents' while they tried to work the case, work the case out. He was not getting paid, and it's still an ongoing. These cases don't happen overnight. I mean, they don't get taken care of overnight. They can take years.
through
normal.
civil or the
No,
canon?
through the canonical. They can
Canonical.
take years. What the church does, and again, we are not canon lawyers and civil lawyers. If there's any of those listening and I say something that isn't exactly, according to paragraph and code, I am not a lawyer.
But the best you understand.
The best, is that if there's a civil or criminal action, the church suspends canon law until that civil and criminal is taken care of. That can take years, okay? Then, once that's cleared up, then there's the canonical. And that can take years. And a canon lawyer can charge just as much as a civil and criminal lawyer. So if you've got a civil criminal lawyer charging $150 an hour, you'll find canon lawyers that charge that much. It's the nature of the beast, if I can say it like that.
Wow.
And
Where do they get?
Where they get the money? They have to pay for it. Now, it's no different than you and I. If you back over the neighbor's dog and they want to sue you, you've got to hire the attorney. There is no entity that's going to come to you and pay your bill. You have to pay that bill. Right or wrong as the case may be.
You have a priest. He's been removed. He's got very little money.
Mm-hmm.
His bishop doesn't want him back. He goes through the canonical, or he wants to go to a canon lawyer, but he doesn't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
So if he doesn't have the money, nothing happens. He's out of luck, correct?
Yes, we've had a lot of men who call in asking, what can I do, or can you guys help me, that type of thing. And a lot of times it's simply, the first step, Father, is you need a canon lawyer. I don't have any money. I can't pay the man or woman who what we do oftentimes is we work with the canon lawyer and try to figure out payment.
Okay.
Now, sometimes when the priest does get a canon lawyer, his support group helps out. They recognize there's movement, so they'll help out. And
Parishioners and so forth.
no, well, former parishioners,
Okay.
friends,
Yes.
that type of thing. More times than not, he doesn't have that network, and we end up working on a payment plan with the canon lawyer. We've done that hundreds of times because he needs a canon lawyer. Without a canon lawyer, he can. Because most priests don't know their canonical rights. Why should they?
Yeah, they don't
You
think
don't-
anything
yeah,
can happen.
Right. They don't think that way. So when they do contact the canon lawyer and they understand what's going on, we just had a case recently where the bishop was really going after the priest, and it was nothing. It was a sin more than anything else. And the bishop wanted him gone. He was literally threatening him on the phone, and we got in touch with the canon lawyer, and the canon lawyer called the bishop, said, this priest is my, I represent this priest, and according to canon law, this, and this does not have to happen, but this, and this does. And now they're moving forward in a more rational.
Okay. So it just brings everything down to, okay. Yeah, in the legal system of the United States, you have a public defender.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have money to defend yourself, they'll appoint a lawyer. But
Well, and it does say in canon law that the diocese should pay for the canon lawyer, the priest's canon lawyer.
okay,
We've got about 25% response in that. The
Oh.
canon lawyer will ask the diocese to pay, and 25% of the time they do.
okay, terrific. But again, you don't try to get involved. You're just here to help the priest. You're not to really get involved with the bishop and the priest.
Sure. Oh, we've got some cases that it's clearly the priest is probably shouldn't have been ordained. I mean, we don't know his previous history.
Right.
At this stage in life, if this is how he was years ago, he probably should not have been ordained. But according to canon law and scripture, the diocese should still help out. And we say, Father, we'll go to the diocese and we'll see. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Okay. Can the priest get mass stipends if they've been?
Yes, if they are a priest in good standing, meaning that they haven't been laicized, I
Okay.
use that term. If they're a priest in good standing, then they can offer a private mass, and they can receive mass stipends from us. The problem is that because of history and whatnot, mass stipends are relatively controlled. They are controlled by dioceses. Most dioceses, a stipend is $10 per mass, and a priest can only receive one stipend per day. He can offer 3 masses, but he can only receive, for those 3 masses, he can only offer one for a stipend.
Okay.
So when people think, oh, well, they can receive stipends and live off of that, you're talking 30 masses a month, $300. Anything above, sure, we could send him money above and beyond that
Right.
if we wanted to, if we had it, and in some cases we do. But the masses themselves are not something that a priest can live on.
Okay. All right. Are you afraid of them taking advantage of you financially?
There's a couple cases. Well, like I said earlier, we've had some guys call. I remember one gentleman came in and he met with us. He flew in from somewhere on the West Coast. Yeah, he flew in from the West Coast, and excuse me. He spent the day with us. Spent the night at a hotel, and then came and spent the day with us and explained his situation. He owed some people some money that he had personally borrowed. And he was not from this country, so he was going back to the country to where he had borrowed the money, and he wanted to pay him back. And we said, well, Father, we can help you talk to the people who might, some of your friends who might give you money, but we don't have that kind of money. And it took a couple contacts after that. I mean, he called back and said, I haven't gotten a check yet. And, Father, number one, we don't have the money, and number two, that's not what we talked about. But those are very, there's one or two cases like that. Again, most of them are, I need a couple $100. Okay. Now, there's a couple guys who we work with that, as one priest told us, if your intent is to help the man, then that's your intent. If he then takes the money and spends it ridiculously or frivolously, you can't control that. So are we concerned that they're taking advantage of us? Sure, it's always a concern, but our intent is to help them. And if they are truly taking advantage of us, they're not getting a lot of money from us.
All right. One of the other questions, and we kind of touched on it earlier, but the retirement fund collection in the parishes that go for religious.
Mm-hmm.
How come none of that money is going? Or is that, why is that not going to the...
Well, for the religious, that's the religious, excuse me, the religious live with their community.
Okay.
We have Capuchins down in downtown Detroit. They all live there. They retire there. They don't have a source of income in the sense of like a diocesan does. They don't...
The vow of poverty.
Yeah. Well, for them personally, but also they don't operate the same way as a parish. A priest gets... if there is a pension, nowadays it's typically 401k, meaning they have to take part of their own $25,000 or $30,000 salary and put that away. But if there is a pension, that's, I'm guessing, controlled down at the diocese. So the funds come in from the different parishes and feeds that pension.
I just love doing this. I was never expecting to do this when I came to work here at Opus Bono until Joe said, hey, you like to ask a lot of questions. Why don't you be the the host of the show here? So,
well, like I said, Dave, there were some discrepancies with the stapler, and we'll talk about that after.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
One too many staples.
All right. Our guest next week, Father Perone, came up with a prayer for priests, and I thought we'd like to end that prayer. Again, stay tuned next week at 12 o'clock, and may God bless you. Pete, you want to read the prayer?
This is the Opus Bono Sacerdotii Prayer for Priests. O Lord Jesus Christ, eternal High Priest, and exemplar of priestly holiness and dignity, we are grateful to you for having chosen certain men for the ministerial priesthood, by which you continue to instruct, admonish, forgive, nourish, and strengthen your church. We are sorely aware of the great need of priests in our time to be confirmed in their sacred calling, so that they may continue confidently in their ministry of mediating your graces to men and of representing them before your august majesty. Relying on the intercession of Holy Mary, Mother of Priests, and of Saint Joseph, her beloved spouse, we beg your help for the priests who are the most troubled, tempted, discouraged, and suffering. May the noble and sacred office of the priesthood, which has too often been reviled and scorned, regain its admirable stature in the sight of all men, for your greater honor and glory, and for the sanctification and salvation of your people. Amen.